Welcome to the Vendetta Sports Media Daily Show. Today is June the 14th. Today we have myself, James Herrick, with me. We've got Jack. How's it going?
It's going good, James. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. We got a nice little day out, so it's a good day over here in Michigan. But I guess to start off here on the Daily Show, it has been a great couple days for some members here at Vendetta and the Don himself, Trey Daubert. So for those who didn't watch kind of the conclusion of yesterday's Daily Show, I know Matt and Bag Donuts talked about it, but Trey was at the game 5 of the Stanley Cup Finals last night. He is a big Vegas fan. Vegas swept the floor with the Panthers. I believe the final score was 9-3. So that's a pretty one-sided beating. So congrats to Trey. And for anyone interested, Trey was posting pictures and videos on his Twitter last night. So if anyone is interested, you can go check those out as well, because looked like he was having a great time, and rightfully so. I can only imagine being in the crowd watching one of your favorite teams win the championship.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I'm sure an atmosphere like that is just like unmatched, and yeah, I'm sure last night for Trey was a very crazy one, to say the least.
Yeah, and hockey's tense too. I mean, like when you see like it, obviously the end of that game probably wasn't the most tense ending in the world because it is 9-3. But when puck drops and it's 0-0, and
Yeah.
that Vegas I think scored the first 2 goals, I can only imagine the energy in that building when the first goal went in and then the subsequent second. And I imagine those were some big time moments down there in Vegas. And from the looks on Trey's Twitter, it looks like that arena was going crazy.
Oh yeah, those fans. I mean, they came so close. What was it, like the first year? I think it was like the first year Vegas got added to the NHL. Didn't they like make it to the Stanley Cup
Yeah, I believe
Finals and they
so.
lost? Because I
And
remember hearing about that.
yeah, and for those watching, neither myself or Jack are massive hockey guys, but gotta give the boss some recognition when he gets down there for game 5. So
Oh yeah,
um
definitely. And yeah, I mean, like you said, I don't neither one of us really follow hockey too much, but a score of 9-3. I know enough about hockey to know that 9 goals is not something that happens very often. I'm sure it's less happens even more or less often
mhm.
in the Stanley Cup
Yeah,
Finals.
and Vegas hit the over themselves. I believe the over in that game was 5.5. So Vegas
They
hit that by
crushed it.
themselves.
Yeah, they didn't even
Yeah.
just hit it; they crushed it.
And also shout out to Garrett and Jerry. They both Denver Nugget fans who they obviously won championships for themselves on Tuesday. So credit to them, and they will be at the parade. I believe both of them will be there tomorrow. Parade is tomorrow, I believe. So also. Dom was at the A's protest game where they had to sell the team chant. So it has been an exciting 3 days here for a lot of people here at Vendetta. So
Yeah, a lot going on for fans of different teams for Vendetta. Yeah, that whole A situation, I'm sure, was probably pretty fun to be at,
that's
even given the
yeah,
circumstances.
that's an interesting situation just in itself. Of is the team going to sell? Is it are they relocating? Because I know they're having some. I believe the vote on the stadium was delayed a couple times, and that whole situation in itself is interesting. And the A's fans packing out that I don't. Well, they had quite a few people there. It wasn't a sellout or anything, but it was a
For their
protest. So
standards.
yeah, for their standards and the purpose behind it, it was probably a 300% spike in attendance, and it was in a protest. So
Yeah, well, what was Dom saying in that MLB chat that he got the tickets for like what, $12 or something like that? Or 16, yeah.
yeah,
The ones were half priced. 16. So that means I got full price. They were about like 30 some dollars. It's like, my
yeah,
God,
yeah.
things were getting
And
bad down there. And
he said it felt like a playoff game too. So it's
yeah.
like that's crazy in its own right.
Well, and then he sends the video too after of all the fans throwing all the trash and stuff on the field.
Right,
But
I
yeah, it was
get it.
clearly a diverse set of fans there.
Yep,
A lot of angry, and rightfully so, a lot of angry Oakland fans.
yep. cannot blame him at all. And then kind of looking at the world of sports, like today in the last 2 days, 3 days, really, in NBA has been a lot of massive talking points. So that's probably what we're going to start with here, and then maybe transition into some MLB later. But the news in the world of the NBA is rapid, and kind of the number one thing that's come out this morning is Bradley Beal. And this wasn't necessarily a trade request or a trade demand, or the Wizards putting him up on the market for sure, but it was kind of like yeah, if we rebuild, we've all agreed that we'll trade Bradley Beal if we decide to start a rebuild, which I think makes sense. But I also think it's a little bit showing that, hey, maybe the Wizards are a little bit more ready to rebuild than some people are, maybe a little bit more willing to rebuild than they are being upfront about it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. So what? That means that Bradley Beal's getting traded. Then is that what we're agreeing to? I mean, it feels like Washington's been rebuilding pretty much since post those John Wall days when he was still in his prime.
hmm And this Bradley Beal situation was interesting as well because his contract, I don't want to, Bradley Beal right now is a great player, but he's going to be getting a lot of money for a long time from the Wizards. And it almost, I wonder what his trade value is like considering the contract that he's on, because any team that brings him in has to ask, what is this going to look like 2-3 years down the line for us, because that contract gets upwards of 50 million, and there's still quite a few years left in that deal as well.
And Beal is 29. Okay, I thought he was already in his 30s personally, but yeah, 29 and
He's been around for a long time.
yeah, and like you said, he's got what, like 5, 7 more years left on the contract. The thing with Bradley Beal is like I feel like his game has the potential to maybe last a bit longer than most people's games, just because like when I watch Bradley Beal play, like it doesn't seem like he's one of those guys that's like overly reliant on athleticism. He's a really crafty scorer, good ball handler, really good shooter. I mean, he's just one of the best scorers in the league. I mean, he's always towards the top of the league in total points and points per game. Granted, a lot of that is because he gets a lot of empty shots on a you know unimpressive Wizards team. But yeah, like trying to think of a trade value. I'm like trying to think of a team that would maybe want to trade for him and take on that contract.
Yeah, and I'll just throw this in here: the contract he's got left is 4 years, 4 more years, which basically takes him from age 30 to age 34, because he'll be 30 when the season
Yeah.
starts. And it gets the final years of player option, and it's basically all those years get upward of $50 million, because he's already got the max a couple times. So, regardless of who goes after Bradley Beal, it is not going to be easy on their payroll at all, especially with the new CBA coming in.
Yeah, making that trade work financially is seems like it would be a very difficult task. I don't like off the top of my head, I can't think of like teams that have a bunch of cap space because I feel like if Beal were to get traded off, obviously he'd want to go, to a contending team or a team that, has aspirations of winning. But it's like when you look at a lot of the teams that are kind of in those positions, it's like, well, which of those teams can realistically bring in Bradley Beal
Mm-hmm.
and afford him?
Yeah. And the other thing that the two teams that I kind of had in mind, and the one report came out shortly after the Beal news, was that the Heat would be interested. And that kind of spiked my interest because the Heat are always linked to star players, it feels like.
Yeah,
But the Heat also have the salaries to kind of match any deal, because you need to match Beal's practically 50 million, make the math simple. But you've got Lowry, who's got 1 year left and has a lot on that deal.
I think
You've got
Robinson.
Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero. So it's like they have the salaries to match, which is interesting. Obviously, like we kind of touched on, it's hard to kind of figure out how much salary would be put into a deal, or how many draft picks, excuse me, would be put into a deal like that, and how much do you want to leverage your future? And if you're the Miami Heat, adding Bradley Beal to a team with Jimmy's contract and Bam's contract,
It's
all
a
of a
lot of
sudden
money tied
you've
up to.
yeah, you've got a lot of money tied up in three players who, um, Jimmy is up there in age, Bam is still a little bit younger, and Beal will be up there in age by the end of this contract. That said, if this pushes the Heat over the top and can get them a chip in the next year or 2 years, you kind of have to live with the kind of downside of those contracts as long as you win a chip, which is
Yeah,
obviously no guarantee.
I mean, yeah, obviously, Miami's I think kind of in that they know that their window, kind of in air quotes, is right now with Jimmy. With
Hmm.
Jimmy and Bam, Tyler Hero, and kind of this roster they have constructed. And the only other thing is like, if you do make a trade for Beal, you're very likely going to be giving up a lot of depth. Yeah, you'll be bringing in, one of the better scorers in the league, but you're going to be giving away a lot of players that were, or a lot of guys that were pretty important and helped this Heat team make that run that they made on. So it's kind of like trying to balance of not only financially does it work, but what does it make sense in terms of the value of what you're giving up in order to bring in Beal.
Yeah. I'd be interested to see if they could keep Caleb Martin or a young guy like Nikola Jovic. Those would kind of be some guys where I'm interested to see if those guys get put in the deal because financially those guys wouldn't need to be included
Yeah,
to get that deal done. But if you're the Wizards, is Tyler Hero, because Tyler Hero is probably the only guy out of a package that would be there long term. At least
yeah,
that's
he'd
what you'd
probably be the
assume.
main name.
But it's yeah, and then from there, it's like how much more do you want to build upon? Because if I'm the Heat, I'm not sure that I want to give up Caleb Martin, who's on a very team friendly contract.
Yeah,
Like you said, that's a major piece for them. Jovic is a guy with a lot of potential who is in that Heat development system, and I imagine he'll be good. Maybe next year, maybe it's 2 years from now. But he's on a rookie contract, and it's like those aren't really guys you can afford to give up if you want to keep any resemblance of depth on the roster.
yeah, but then it's also tough with this Heat team because like at the same time, it also feels like maybe they do need a little bit more star power. And granted, maybe that was because Tyler Hero was hurt for his entire postseason run, which didn't really seem to affect him all too much. But even
Mhm.
once they got to the finals, it just kind of seemed like their depth was still good. They obviously still had those depth pieces, but it just kind of seemed like they didn't quite have enough star power at the top, especially when Jimmy Butler wasn't playing at his absolute best. It was just kind of like if Jimmy Butler wasn't on a heater, it just seemed like they didn't really have another guy that could step up consistently and kind of be that scoring option. You had the some games, where Caleb Martin, would do good, or Lowry would do good. Duncan Robinson would have a good game, or Bam would actually be aggressive, but it just always seemed kind of scattered. And if Jimmy Butler wasn't being that guy to step up, then it just didn't really seem like they had somebody on the offensive end that could kind of consistently get them a bucket when they needed it.
Yeah, and kind of to that point, like I think it's hard to evaluate that Heat team just based on a guy like Tyler Hero being out. Where it's like, there's a world where Tyler Hero comes out and has an outstanding playoffs, and you think to yourselves, "There's no way we let that guy walk." That's obviously no guarantee, but it's a lot harder to evaluate when you don't see him on the court. Um, you have questions about Jimmy Butler, where it's like Jimmy Butler, outstanding. What would that series look like if he wouldn't have hurt his ankle? Because I do think the ankle hurt him later on, and it's like now you're kind of looking at yourself going, if Jimmy was healthy and at 100% all series, in the finals, maybe you extend it 6-7 games, and maybe you don't think you need, another star player, but they're kind of not even working with like the information just because they couldn't get an accurate look at this roster. And you also have to ask yourself, do guys like Caleb Martin, Gabe Vincent, Kyle Lowry had a nice couple games in the playoffs, great, final game there. I think he hit 3 or 4 big threes for them that kind of kept them in that game. It's like, can that production continue to come from those guys? Because that is not something, is that an everyday thing, or is that a once in a while thing that you get out of those guys?
Yeah, definitely. I think specifically like a guy like Gabe Vincent is definitely a guy who's played himself into a more serious role come the start of next season. I mean, he was just outstanding this entire playoff run. Wasn't as good, in the finals, but I think that was just kind of a theme for pretty much this entire Heat team. They just kind of all played a little bit worse in the finals, but you saw in the that previous round when the Heat were playing the Celtics, like those games where Gabe Vincent was out and wasn't playing, like it was clear that the Heat offense, wasn't moving the same. I think he's a bit underrated as a playmaker too, but I think he really stepped up also as a scorer and definitely kind of more solidified his role with this Heat team next season. And same with a guy like Caleb Martin.
Yeah, I agree with you. Another team I want to throw out there, and I don't know, this may hurt your soul, you may love it, but I think the 76ers may be in play here. And my reasoning for that is just because it feels like whatever team tries to get in on Beal and take the risk of his contract, I think they need to be a little bit desperate. And I think having James Harden walk out the door may lead to some desperate movement. And we'll see how that 76ers team ends up, but you've got the contract of Tobias Harris, which is a great start for any contract matching or financial movement. So I'm interested to see how that would look for a 76ers team. I'm interested to see if they would explore that move.
Yeah, see, I wanted to potentially name the Sixers as one of the teams, but I don't know if that would have been too homer. But yeah, I don't know what a trade for Bradley Beal would look like, especially if James Harden just completely walks. Because if he's on the roster, that's another potential contract. So I don't know if they do a sign and trades type thing. If they are serious about going after Beal, just do a sign and trade with Harden. Because yeah, I mean Tobias Harris is on that god awful contract, but it's I think he has one more season after this next one, if I'm not mistaken. So I guess maybe that make it a little bit more enticing for the Wizards in terms of if they're really just trying to rebuild, they could just take on that Tobias contract for another 2 seasons and then just be
Mhm.
completely done with it. Okay, no, so this next season, 2023-2024 is the last year of the contract. So yeah, maybe if the Wizards are trying to just offload Beal and completely rebuild, then yeah, we throw him a guy like Tobias Harris. He's on their books for a season, and then they can just move off of him and free up that cap space. But aside from Tobias Harris, I'm sure they'd be interested in a guy like Maxi, which is one of the few guys on this team that I don't want to get traded.
Mhm.
Kind of like Maxine and Embiid are kind of like the two guys where it's keep them, and then it's if anyone else gets traded, I'm not opposed to that. But I do think Bradley Beal would be a nice addition to this team. I think he would be. He would take some of the scoring pressure off Joel Embiid because that was something that Harden at times just didn't do. He would take a back seat to scoring and try and focus too much on being a playmaker, and sometimes it was just man, I need you to take over and get a bucket, not be swinging the rock to PJ Tucker for three, and I think
Yeah.
Bradley Beal would definitely alleviate that.
Yeah, and I think that the contract situations in Philadelphia are interesting because, first of all, I agree with you about the point about Embiid and Maxi. I think if you're Philadelphia right now, you need to decide, how can we surround those guys with pieces to win, because those are your two franchise guys right now. Um, but outside of that, it's maybe the 76ers don't want to take on another big contract like Beal, because like you said, Tobias Harris is on a 1 year deal, and James Harden is potentially out the door this year. And 12 months from now, you could be looking at a 76ers team with no Harden on the books and no Tobias Harris on the books, and then all of a sudden they have more cap flexibility than they've had in a very long time. Obviously, you still have a couple big contracts on the books there in Embiid, and you'll eventually have to extend Maxi, but at the same time, getting those Harden and Tobias Harris contracts off the books, that then frees up some mobility next offseason. Obviously doesn't help you for this year, right now, but you're looking at a much better situation 12 months from now.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely true. The Sixers are definitely in a position to where they could have, a lot of cap space in the next, couple seasons. It's just when I look at a guy like Embiid and just, his age now and the way he plays in his build, it's just like I feel like you need to be taking full advantage of every single season. And I know it may sound dumb, it is only one season, but it's like, for this Sixer team, it's like they need to start, winning at a serious level because the fans are just it's been a lot of misery for 76ers fans for a while now, and you got Joel Embiid. I believe that he's a player that's capable of being the number one on the championship team, and I think at this point it's just kind of like you're almost wasting seasons if you're just kind of going into it saying, "Oh well, we know that the next year,
Hmm.
we'll have much more cap space," and it's like realistically, Embiid is another another knee or two injury away from maybe not being able to play basketball again. He's a big body. He's carrying a lot of weight on those knees. I mean, it's already been an issue for him dating back to when he was drafted. So it's like it just seems like with a guy like Embiid, you want to be kind of striking on as many different seasons as you can.
Yeah, and I was going to bring up the point about the injuries as well, because as unfortunate as it is, when you start piling up the injury history, you then exactly like you said, you have less flexibility to go. Oh, we'll wait until next off season. So I do agree at that point. And like you said, if you can't be skipping out on seasons, maybe it does make sense to bring in Bradley Beal. And that's a guy where I think a backcourt of Maxi and Beal could make a lot of sense, and I think that could work because I don't think either guy needs to have their ball on the hands in their hands every single possession to find success. I think you can, work out those touches and work out what that would look like when Embiid has the ball, and both those guys I think have the capability to play off ball, so that could create a really interesting team. And I'm not sure what else the 76ers could do this offseason to kind of make their team much better because I'm not sure that bringing back Harden is necessarily, the number one priority. Beal may be a better option right now, even though the long term contract may not be as good as you'd like it to be.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, I think a Bradley Beal, Joel Embiid like pick and roll game would work wonders for our offense, especially with Nick Nurse there now. I'm sure he'd
Hmm.
be able to draw up all sorts of offensive plays and whatnot. The only issue with that potential backcourt is defensive backcourt of Bradley Beal and Tyrese Maxey seems like it will be giving up quite a lot of points. I don't know. You may have to have some guys off the bench who are just like strictly defensive guys, or just load the rest of that starting lineup with as much defense as you can get. Because I mean, yeah, Beal and Maxi will be able to score a bunch of points, but I mean, he's not like a horrible defender. He's just really small, which kind of just automatically makes you not a great defender when you're just as small as he is. And Bradley Beal's never really been a good defender. It's just never really been his game. And at this point in his career, I don't think defense is necessarily something he's really going to be giving his all for. So yeah, that's just kind of another thing to think about. Is it would be because like the Celtics are the team that we still just can't seem to get by, and I'm thinking like if they're still rocking guards like Marcus Smart, and Derek White, two bigger defensive minded guards and whatnot. It's just I don't know how Bradley Beal and Maxi are able to stop, you know, guard play like that.
Yeah, that is obviously a good concern to bring up. I also think that may work out a little bit better if you're able to get some hands on and some more defensive oriented wings that could, take Tatum and out of the game. Because if you're trying to beat a Celtics team or beat a Bucks team and you can defend the wing, then maybe you let Marcus Smart and a guy like Derek White beat you, who they're good players. Obviously they probably run a little bit bigger and try and get a Brown versus, Maxey, or Brown versus Beal matchup out there. But if you can get some wing defense, then that may really, really help them kind of combat that as well, and make those guards beat them, which that is no guarantee either that you can, if you go get Beal, there's no guarantee you can then go also add wing defenders, because wing defenders are a premium right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's not 6'8" guys who can defend NBA level talent growing on trees.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, that's why they always say, if you want to be a serious basketball player, and if you're a wing player, you either need to be impossible to guard or be able to guard other 6'8" wing guys. So I
Yep.
mean, yeah, wing play and 3-and-D wing guys are always a premium in the league, and they're just becoming even more valuable now
Yep.
as the NBA continues to rely on 3-pointers more.
Especially when you look at a guy like Aaron Gordon in the finals. So Aaron Gordon, doesn't have the best 3-point shot in the world, but he will do work on the defensive end against another team's star wing, and a guy like that becomes a lot more valuable when you can pair him up against a Jimmy Butler or
Yeah, he can
Kevin
just create
Durant.
mismatches
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
just and I mean, Aaron Gordon was feasting against that Heat team because they were. I mean, Mike Malone was just, to his credit, was just drawing up some great stuff. It just seemed like every time Aaron Gordon had the ball, he was either wide open or was being guarded by Kyle Lowry or Duncan Robinson. It was just, the Heat just seemed out of position a lot defensively, which is something that I was surprised to see because Spoelstra is such a great coach, and we've all talked about how amazing of a coach he is.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seemed like Aaron Gordon was having his way in the entire series.
I think they had a really hard time finding the size and the physicality. Even when a guy like Kevin Love was on the floor, they did much better. But Kevin Love at this point in his career isn't the most athletic guy.
He can only
You
be so
know,
physical.
yeah, and he can only do so much. But a Heat, they would probably like to add, whether it's with the 18th pick, or who knows what the Heat are going to do at the 4. But they'd probably like at least one physical body in there, to kind of not force them to play small ball with Caleb Martin at a 4 or Jimmy Butler defending 4s. That's probably something that they would like to add this offseason. So, but same time, they got past the Celtics, who play two bigs all the time. So credit to them in that series as well.
Definitely, but in other NBA news, I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
you've heard about it at this point, but the Heat apparently made an offer to the Nets at the trade deadline this season.
Mm-hmm.
Deal obviously didn't go through. It was reported on by Shams. Let me see if I could find what the potential deal was. Not looking like it's saying anything now,
I
but
don't.
I guess only
I,
my question. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say I don't think the actual deal is out there. I don't think the specifics have been released, but it's just the fact that they kind of
That
attempted to
they
grab
did.
Kyrie.
Okay, but I guess I just wanted to ask. So let's say theoretically the Heat do
Mhm.
get Kyrie Irving and he's on this roster. Do you think this Heat team's able to go on this deep of a run with Kyrie Irving?
I don't know. Part of me says no. Um,
I agree, but
the
full partly. I do not think this Heat team makes this run with Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, because the thing that the Heat did really well was play within the offense and move the ball, and especially early on. How did those early series look? In the moments where Jimmy Butler was scoring 50, in the moments where Jimmy Butler was going crazy, what do those series look with Kyrie on the floor? Um, I think that's a question. The one thing I will say is I can't imagine the offer that the Heat sent was, that good of an offer. Just because when you look at the package that the Nets got back for Kyrie, I want to say off the top of my head it was Finney Smith, Dinwiddie, a first and 2 seconds, I believe it was,
That sounds right. I don't know if there was another player in there, but I think
which
that's right.
that's not the best offer.
Clax
So
no, Claxton wasn't in that. They drafted him, I
no,
think, right?
no,
Yeah.
yeah, they did. So it's like the Heat couldn't have, maybe they would have walked out looking victorious because they offered, Lowry and a pick,
Yeah.
who like maybe in that scenario where they're able to keep all their depth, but that's the only thing that would make me kind of go, maybe they did because I can't imagine their offer was very good. But the
Yeah.
initial question of Kyrie on the team, I would say no, they probably don't make it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it just seems like the Heat, at any time there's a big free agent, they're always in like the top 5 odds, it seems like. But yeah, I pretty confidently believe that the C team would not have made a very serious run if Kyrie Irving was one of the main pieces. And like you said, how well the Heat played within the offense. But for me, it's not even as much as like how much it would have affected Jimmy Butler, because think for the most part he still probably would have got his shots and done his thing. But for me, it's the guys like Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin. So I can only imagine that all of them are taking much, much less shots if Kyrie Irving's on the team. And listen, Kyrie Irving is an exceptionally talented basketball player. Like, I'm not going to say that he isn't. I mean, he'll probably go down as one of the best ball handlers in the league. He definitely has his clutch moments, such a crafty scorer, but I think he's just at a point in his career where it just seems like wherever he goes, there's just losing basketball follows.
And I think another situation to look at is Katie going to the Suns, and from an X's and O's standpoint, I think that made more sense in getting Kevin Durant on that team, and that team wasn't able to fully adjust to having Kevin Durant on the roster. Obviously, part of that had to do with him getting injured. You can say a similar thing about Kyrie and Dallas, where I don't think they were ever, I don't think they ever reached their max potential because I don't think they were able to fully adjust to having Kyrie and Luca on the same team. Once again, they didn't play every single game together. But you look down in Miami, there's a very real possibility that, that team never adjusts and um, never, hits full stride because it felt like they hit full stride at the right time. There's
Yeah.
a very real possibility that they don't hit full stride if they, completely bring in a guy the level of Kyrie Irving with the star power and the talent. But at the same time, it's like, how do they reach 100% of their potential by the time the playoffs start? I think it's very hard to say yes. And at the same time, this offseason, it's like the Heat are going to have a very interesting offseason because, like you said, they throw their name in the hat for stars. But now they'd be dealing with, what do we do with Kyrie Irving? Because he is a free agent. So I think that probably would not have worked out. So I agree with your assessment of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, like the cliche saying is, like, one basketball, only one ball to go around. And I think we saw it in the, games that, Kyrie and Luca did both play in. And Luca even, himself came out and expressed the frustration of just, you can just tell that at least with Kyrie and Luca, their games just like, and it really work off each other. It's like that, when you're an elite duo in the NBA, it's almost like your games kind of synergize off each other and you're able to play off each other and whatnot. And when it was Luca and Kyrie, it just kind of seemed so stagnant. Both of them are trying to play iso ball. They're both such ball dominant guys, and they both, so much of their value comes from having the ball directly in their hands a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with this Heat team, Jimmy Butler kind of took that role or takes that role a lot. And I don't know if Kyrie Irving can, kind of mimic that success that Jimmy Butler has brought to Miami.
Mm-hmm. The one thing that I think Kyrie doesn't get enough credit for is his ability to play off ball and his ability to be a spot up shooter, because that worked out well for him a little bit in Cleveland when LeBron had a lot of the offensive load. At the same time, those teams did not have much outside of Kyrie and
Yeah, the
LeBron
two
being
of
primary
them.
ball handlers. So there's the other counterpoint to that as well. So I think this also kind of brings in another thought, and that is Kyrie, and what he's doing this offseason. And we've seen, it seems like he's going to go back to Dallas, but there's a lot of questions, contract wise. How much money do you want to give Kyrie? How
Always
long?
is with Kyrie.
Yeah. How much do you want to commit to Kyrie? And a report came out that the Rockets may be interested in Kyrie if they are unable to land James Harden. And I want to kind of get your thoughts on Kyrie's free agency and also what that would look like for him in Houston. And also, what do you make of Houston this offseason seemingly hunting for stars in Kyrie and Harden in the middle of a rebuild? And I will say I think the Harden makes a lot more sense because Harden's already established in Houston. Fans would probably enjoy that, I assume. But the Kyrie one seems a little bit more like they're reaching for something.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right in terms of the Harden one. Like, I still don't think them signing Harden would be a great deal. It still doesn't really make sense at all for their rebuild they're currently in. But but that one I could at least see, like, the history. He was such a great player there for so long. Like that's a move that at least will bring in a lot more fans, will bring in a lot more interest. It'll get people in Houston to, I think, care a little bit more about the current product that is the Houston Rockets. But yeah, I mean, them going after a guy like Kyrie Irving, I think that would be a horrible idea because like the thing with Kyrie is not only because on the court play is obviously one thing, and he's extremely talented, and it doesn't always lead to winning basketball. But it's just with Kyrie, there's just always seemingly so much off the court stuff. It just he can never seem to keep his name out of the news or just not say something that ends up all over the internet. And when you're a rebuilding team and you're rebuilding and becoming, trying to rebrand the organization basically, it's you want to create, a strong locker room. You want that bond in the locker room to be strong. You're trying to create a new culture there, and you bring in Kyrie, and it just seems like you're potentially opening yourself up to just a litany of potential scandals and things that could just destroy your rebuild.
Yeah. I'll say this. First of all, I don't think it's ever a good idea to try and buy your way out of a rebuild with
Yeah,
players. I don't think that ever really works. I think it's a lot smarter to find your star players through the draft and build around those guys. I think trying to, buy your way out, whether it be with Harden or whether it be with Kyrie, is a bad, bad idea. And when you look at Houston, who have the number 4 pick in the draft, you're going to get a guy with high upside at 4. It's just the way this year's draft looks. I don't know which direction they're going to go. And we don't have to speculate too much about that, but there will be potential there. And you have Jalen Green and you have Sengun and you have last year's number 3 pick, Jabari Smith. And regardless of how much you love those guys, it feels like you're just trying to toss a star in the middle of a rebuild that you're attempting rather than continuing to see progress out of the young guys and win with those young guys. Which to me, I think you should always prioritize the young guys if you're rebuilding because say you draft Amon Thompson at 4, who's a primary ball handler, then you bring in Kyrie Irving. It's like, well, this is now we've got a little bit of a funky situation on our hands because ideally you'd like a guy like Amon Thompson to get the reps and become an elite point guard, but that's probably not going to be the case if you have a primary ball handler, regardless of who it is. So it's a very interesting situation that I don't really see the viewpoint from Houston. I know they're trying to win, and I know that they don't have their first round pick next year. It's only protected 1 through 4, so they probably don't have a pick next year. So maybe they try and squeeze into the playoffs. But once again, it doesn't really make much sense to me.
yeah. It just seems like throwing lipstick on a pig. I think is how the saying goes. I mean, like let's say they do bring in Kyrie Irving. I mean, what that turns them from a 22 win team to what maybe a 30 win team, maybe 30 something win team. Like, I mean, realistically, how many more wins is Kyrie Irving going to bring this Rockets team? Like, I don't think it's a move that springs them single handedly and anywhere near playoff contention. So I just don't really think it's a great move. I think it just kind of creates a, like you said, a log jam at a important position that you want to fill when you're doing a rebuild. Point guards is always a pretty big position you want to fill
Hmm.
when you're rebuilding a team, and you just kind of be having a log jam there.
And hypothetically, even if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt and say they make the playoffs, are you winning a series?
Yeah, you'll be what,
In
maybe a 7, 8 seed.
Yeah, in the Western Conference right now, it's like my in this being 8 seed matchup with the Nuggets. Good luck. It's
Yeah,
no, that's a
they
bad
they're
idea.
gonna destroy your rebuild to get swept in the first round.
Hmm. The last piece of NBA news that's kind of been in the headlines is Zion, and you did the Zion post with this whole dealings with Mariah Mills, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but the there's a couple things going on with the Pelicans at a time, and the first is that they want to draft Scoot Henderson, and they want to either trade up to pick 2 or pick 3 to get that done. And then everybody goes, well, what the hell are you going to do to trade up from 14 to 2 or 3, however the draft works out? Um, But then, the next day it comes out that they would possibly be interested in moving on from Zion. So I kind of want to get your thought on whether the Pelicans should move on from Zion and, if that could potentially net them a pick early enough to draft Scoot Henderson.
Yeah, it's a tough one, man. Zion is such a weird NBA career because like we've all seen firsthand that when he's on the court, when he's playing, he's so good and he's just so dominant. Like he's got that big frame, but like he knows how to use it, and he's still like surprisingly athletic.
Hmm.
And like you could just see the elite NBA player, and you can constantly see why he went number one. But it's just like man, these injuries. It's becoming such a problem for this Hornets team. It seems like every year it's like they get to a point where it's like, okay, well maybe the Pelicans are gonna, make a serious playoff run, or maybe this is the year they can make a run, and then it's like, oh well, Zion got hurt again. And it's like, well now season's basically done because we got to rely entirely on Brandon Ingram. But
Hmm. And they have some other talent there as well. They've got young guys like Trey Murphy's a really interesting young piece that plays well. Herb Jones is an interesting piece that plays solid defense, and it's like you have some interesting guys right now surrounding Brandon Ingram. When Zion's off the floor, CJ McCollum is there who played really well, and it's like the Pelicans are not a bad roster, but it just if you could get one more, it feels like to me they're trying to get one more star and then more confident. And if this deal were to go through, it feels like they want one more star and they're more confident in Scott Jesus in Scoot being that star rather than Zion, which I think Scoot has a lot of potential. I think Zion has a lot of potential. So it's an interesting thought for them to explore that. And I will say, if they do move off Zion in the hopes of adding pick 2 or pick 3, kind of depends on which one of those teams, if
yeah, wants to make the deal.
yeah. But either way, if you're the Trailblazers, you probably can't get a better player to put next to Damian Lillard with
Yeah,
the
I
with
was
the
just gonna say
third pick
Damon
than
Zion.
Zion. Same for the Pelicans at 2. LaMelo and Zion creates a really interesting roster as well. So I could see why those teams would be interested in Zion over Scoot at this point in his career as well.
Yeah, I think just for the Pelicans at this point, I think maybe they're just betting on the health of Scoot Henderson over Zion. Like I know I've already seen some articles on this about people trying to say if this scandal with Zion Williamson is why he's getting traded. That's not why they're gonna fucking trade him. I mean that's like a Wednesday. That's like a weekly occurrence for NBA players. Like an NBA team isn't gonna trade a star player because he's cheating on his girlfriend. Like no team would be good if that were the case.
Yeah.
So like that's not why he's getting traded. If the only reason why he'd be getting traded at this point is because the Pelicans just simply do not believe that Zion Williamson will be able to give them like a full season at any point. I want to pull up basketball reference real quick. I just want to see like how many games he's missed. It just seems like every season it's some sort of big injury, or sometimes it's even just a nagging one from years past. Let's see. So yeah, I mean the most games. Oh wait, it's not even telling me how many games he started. But yeah, I think like you said, I think the two teams at 2 or 3 are definitely teams that would be willing to make a move for Zion. Like I think the Hornets become a much better team with Zion, and then I think that would be a great move for the Blazers too. Personally, I mean they've just seemingly never built around Bradley Beal, and I think the two of them together in Portland could maybe create some semblance of winning.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, could you hear me?
I think I was freezing bad. I was freezing bad. I think that was on me, not you.
Oh,
Um,
were you? Okay,
but to yeah, I think that was me. I think they could hear you live, but I think I could not hear most of what you said. But that's my internet craps out every once in a while on me. That's my bad. But
that's all right. It's the same thing for me.
uh so but yeah, I agree that, I think this could be even good for Zion to kind of get a change of scenery where,
Definitely,
I think, maybe being out of New Orleans may work out well for him in the long term. Um, a change of scenery could do him a lot of good, and it may come back
definitely.
to, you could look at this 5 years down the road and go, it's like, would he ever reach his potential in New Orleans? Is I think is the issue they're having.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your credit, yeah, I mean, I think a change of scenery would definitely benefit him. I mean, we've seen in years past, and I mean, not even just in basketball. I mean, across all the major sports. I mean, sometimes really all a guy needs literally is a change of scenery. It's just sometimes you're playing in an area where the lights are a bit too bright, or you just can't deal with the fans, or you're just in your head for some reason. Sometimes a fresh start is literally all these guys need to,
Mhm,
flip a switch and
mhm,
kind of unlock their full
mhm.
potential.
And there's a lot of pressure being the number one overall pick, and maybe some of that would be alleviated, if he goes to, especially if he goes to like Charlotte. Maybe if he's in Portland, there's a lot of pressure to win right away with Dame. But if he's in Charlotte, I don't think there's going to be much pressure
Yeah.
on him at all. At all.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, if he's in Charlotte with Lamelo, I think there's definitely a bit more leniency and leeway there. I mean, I don't know too much about Charlotte fans, but they don't seem, like the most intense fans in the world. I mean, especially now with the current state of the team. But yeah, I just looked it up, and Zion Williamson is apparently averaging 28 and a half games a season at this point in his career, which honestly is even lower than I thought. That's like what, barely a quarter? Is that even a quarter of the season?
Yeah, it's 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 weird too, because at the same time he's had the very public struggles about weight, which have not helped anything for him either,
No.
especially on the court, because it feels like when he's on the court, there's almost a period where he's got to like build back up to what he is.
Yeah, I think that's I think it was
Um,
part of the main reason why the Pelicans are wanting to move on. I mean, I think they just started kind of looking at it and realizing that they're never going to really be able to do anything serious with Zion Williamson playing 30 games a season and then, providing them no value. So I guess from that aspect, I get maybe, you still got Brandon Ingram, you still got this roster. You got to try and fill it with as much star talent as you can while you still have the chance. Can you hear me, James? Am I frozen?
so I say we close out with some ship here. Now to you.
But yeah, I mean, we already went over the A's lockout. I mean, the Diamondbacks have been one of the most surprising teams up until this point in the season. I know the Phillies are playing them right now. We just destroyed them last night, but they're like 41 and 26. Corbin Carroll has been, you know, off this out of this world. He seems like he's just gonna run away with Rookie of the Year at this point. But I also wanted to pull up because I did an article before the season on like preseason award predictions. I wanted to just because we're almost halfway through the season at this point. I just wanted to maybe go over these real quick if you didn't mind and see how I have been doing with some of these major awards. Can you hear me, James?
Yeah, go.
Sorry, you're cutting out.
Uh, the internet has gotten bad for me, but yeah.
All right. So, I mean, I guess we'll
For
start.
what they've done so far.
You said what?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think that's better.
Oh no.
I can hear you. Now you're frozen again, I think. A little bit of technical difficulties. Life of college students. But yeah, I guess I will start by going over some of the predictions I made. I'm sure James is figuring out whatever is going on over there, but so my first prediction was for the American League MVP. And obviously with the American League MVP, there's great names to pick from before every season. You got guys like Trout, Otani, J Ram. But this year, I kind of wanted to go a little different, go with the young buck, go with the pick maybe a little bit outside the box. So I went with Julio Rodriguez. I mean, he was amazing last season in his rookie year. And I thought that maybe this year he was going to take. Oh,
What is going on?
you there? You're good now.
I'll tell you what. I've had quite the struggles the last 3 minutes or so
Yeah, I
with
mean,
the
I was just
internet,
saying
but
it's just the struggles of a college student. Internet's not always the best.
that's on me. That's on me. I'm here now. I missed pretty much everything you were saying. Last thing I heard you say was that the Diamondbacks have had a surprising year. I don't know how long that was because I've been trying to get the internet sorted, but
No, you're good. Yeah, I was
um,
going over that, and then I was saying before the season started, I did an article on like preseason award predictions. So I was gonna say if you didn't mind, I was just gonna go over those and
Yeah, of course.
see how those have been. So yeah, I'm in the middle of the first one. My first prediction was Julio Rodriguez for AL MVP. That one's not looking too hot right now. I guess I'll try and grade myself on all these. This one I'll probably give myself like D plus C minus. He has heated up as of recently a little bit. He's kind of finding his groove a little bit, but on the season he's hitting 241, 37 RBIs, 12 home runs, 730 OPS and only a 105 OPS plus. So it hasn't been a bad season by any means, but definitely has not been the MVP season that I was expecting him to have. But this next pick that I made, I already know I'm giving myself an A plus plus for this one. It was Ronald Acuna Jr. as the National League MVP. I took him second in the Vendetta Fantasy Baseball League. I know a lot of people maybe were puzzled by that decision that I made, but all off season and even all of last season, I was super high on Ronald Acuna. I was just saying he's going to come back, be fully healthy from that knee injury, and just go on an absolute tear. And I mean, he has done just that so far. I'm pretty sure he is the NL MVP leader right now. I don't have the odds pulled up,
He
but
is, I just pulled it up. He is minus 130 for National League MVP, and Freeman is in second at plus 500. So he has the lead in the betting odds at a pretty wide margin right now.
yeah. And I mean, he's sitting 330 on the year, 13 home runs, 40 RBIs. But I mean, the crazy part's been the 28 stolen bases. I mean, he's just kind of doing it all out there. He's got a 3.3 WAR already on the season, 155 OPS plus, which is just insane. So yeah, that pick as of now is definitely seeming like it's going to hit. Another pick that I think's been going pretty good so far. I give myself maybe like a just flat out A minus on this. Has been Shane McClanahan for the AL Cy Young. He's another guy who I picked up for fantasy for our league, and I think he's like the number one rated starting pitcher right now. He's definitely up there. I mean, this season he's 10-1. Pretty sure he's the first pitcher to get to 10 wins. I mean, 10-1, a 2.18 ERA, 92 strikeouts. He's not walking a lot of guys. I mean, 92 strikeouts to 30 walks. He's got good command. He's just been super consistent this year. Hasn't really gotten litten up at all. I don't think he's first in odds right now.
He is. McClanahan is sitting at plus 260 with Framber Valdez behind him at plus 500. So you're in
Okay.
the lead for that one as well, which
All
2 for
right.
3 so far is a
Yeah.
pretty good start.
My NL Cy Young, we get a little bit. We kind of fall back to earth a little bit. I had to go with one homer pick out of all of them, and I was confident in Zach Wheeler as the NL Cy Young. He's been so damn close. In years past, he had that one year where he just lost out to that like historic Corbin Burns season, but
Mhm.
this year it hasn't been amazing for Zach Wheeler. He did just come off a really good start against the Diamondbacks. He went like 7 innings, gave up 1 run. But this year it hasn't, been quite as dominant as it has been for Zach Wheeler with the Phillies. He's 5-4, a 3.73 ERA. I mean, he's still striking out, good amount of batters at 94. He has been limiting the walks at 18, but he's just getting hit a little bit harder this year. I think he's been improving recently, which gives me maybe some hope. But I mean, right now Spencer Strider just seems like he's gonna kind of dominate
Mhm.
the
And
NL Cy Young.
the odds for this one, you've got Wheeler is tied with Strider for third. Zach Gallen is in the lead, and Clayton Kershaw second. So
Yeah,
Wheeler
Clayton
and
Kershaw's been off this planet.
Strider gave up, I believe, 5 earned to the Tigers today. Gave up homers to Torkelson and Cabrera, and Eric Haas. So and he gave up an RBI double to Spencer Torkelson. So a very bad start today for Strider. So Wheeler may jump him anytime here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Strider definitely had a great start. Wheeler, I mean, I didn't even think he was that high, truth be told, but I mean, I will take it. I mean, like I said, he's been improving as of lately, so maybe that has something to do with it.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
and they're also. I'm looking at betting odds too. So there's a little bit of projection there as well, so so the books can hold their value. But I think it is telling as to where those predictions sit at the same time.
yeah, but moving on to the rookie of the year, this one just seems tough. It's just trying to predict how rookies are going to do in rookie of the years. I mean, it seems like
Hmm.
picking a name out of the hat for the American League side. I just went with kind of who the preseason favorite was, that being Gunnar Henderson, and I think it's safe to say that he's still kind of trying to adjust to still kind of trying to adjust to the MLB level. You know, he definitely started off a lot worse. He's been a little bit better as of late. You know, he's gotten his OPS plus up to 130, so he's at least above a league average player. But 246 batting average, 355 on base percentage. Definitely hasn't been terrible. Trying to find the odds. I know that that Houston pitcher, I think it's the Hunter Brown kid,
They've got so
has been insane.
right now the American League is fairly close in between Josh Young, Yoshida,
Yeah,
Gunner, and
Yoshida.
Hunter Brown. So those four are packed in that order. So it falls off. The odds fall off quite a bit after that. So that race is still fairly open there on the American side of things.
Yeah, but as of right now, Yoshida seems like I would probably think would be in the lead. He's just. I heard some stat. My roommates are Red Sox fans. They were saying that over the course of a month, I forget which month it was, but over the course of a month, he didn't swing and miss once. Like he did not swing and miss once over the course of an entire month.
That is insane. That is
Yeah,
crazy.
I like almost didn't believe it. It's just flat out ridiculous. I mean, if you do that for a game, that seems impressive enough, but an entire month is just absolutely crazy. But moving on to the NL Rookie of the Year. With this one, I went with Kota Senga. Maybe that's cheating, picking a guy coming over from one of the Japanese leagues as a Rookie of the Year, but it
He's
seemed
eligible. So
yeah, it seemed more like a safe bet, seeing as he was coming over. But again, sound like a broken record. He is also on my fantasy baseball team, and it's been Senga's had a weird start to his career. He's just like no consistency there. It's just he's either going to come out and give you like 7 innings of one hit baseball, or he's going to go out there and walk five guys and give up 4 runs
mhm.
and absolutely crap the bed. He hasn't been horrible. He's 6-3 with a 3.34 ERA. 1.3 WHIP isn't great, but I think that WHIP is so high because again he's just struggled so much with walks. It's just he's still struggling with the command. And you see at times it bites him in the butt. He's just giving up a lot of base runners, and sometimes he's able to work his way out of it. He's got nasty stuff, to where he can sometimes get out of it, but other times he just kind of gets absolutely lit up. The only issue though in the National League is that a man by the name of Corbin Carroll exists, who I already mentioned, and at this point, it seems like it's going to be his award to lose. I mean, Outman's drastically cooled off. He might even get sent down. And like Francisco Alvarez and Ellie De La Cruz, or maybe some two other guys who could potentially come in and steal it. So, I mean, that pick, I don't hate that pick too much, but I'd probably give that one like a C, flat
Yeah.
C.
Barring a Corbin Carroll meltdown, that award is basically, you
Yeah,
might as well get his name put on it unless he, completely goes, unless he bats 100 over the final couple months of the season. But that award is practically all but his. But outside of, the AL MVP of Julio Rodriguez. There's a lot of good picks in there. You know,
Yeah, I'm actually looking back. I think I did better than I thought. And then I also just did manager of the year because why not? My AL manager of the year, I picked Brandon Hyde, the Orioles manager, which at this point is also seeming like it could be a pretty dang good pick because the
hmm
Orioles. I mean, I don't think anyone expected them to be bad this season, but I don't think a lot of people expected them to be this good.
they're
So I think that,
overperforming expectations
yeah.
without a doubt.
And then for the National League, I picked Skip Schumacher for the Marlins. That one, I mean, Marlins aren't bad this year, but I don't think he'll be winning Manager of the Year. But overall, I think his picks aren't pretty bad. I think they're pretty solid.
Yeah, it's a tough task too.
Yeah,
You know, it's not easy to pin down MVP because you can do a great job and then end up having the guy get second or third. It's like, and that's still pretty good in terms of prediction. But looks like you're walking away with one or two at least. I'd
yeah.
say
If I
so.
can get, I even said it in the article, I was like, if I could get one or even maybe two of these awards right, I'll consider that a win.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. And even the ones that aren't like, all right, this one looks very likely. It's like the Sango one. It's like he's probably not going to walk out with Rookie of the Year, but
Yeah, but he'll
you
probably
know,
be, in there in the
top,
discussion by the end of the
top
season.
five probably. It's like it's fairly good for you know any award prediction. I'd say so. Um, we are at a minute and five or an hour and 5 minutes. Jesus. Um, we've gone through some company recaps with everyone winning some chips and attending some games and some big games and some parades, so exciting days for some company. Ran through the NBA rumors, which absolutely poured out once the NBA finals
Yep.
concluded. um, and we got to run over some MLB recap. You ran through your season previews, so we touched a lot of bases here today. I think we did some good work getting some conversation on the top
Also had
topics.
some
So,
technical difficulties you worked through.
yep, that's that is technical difficulties on me, but somehow we managed. I thought it was doom and gloom there for a minute, but here we are concluding the show. We
Well,
made
yeah,
it.
I got
So.
confused when I saw you rejoin. I saw two of your things. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, it kicked me out and it said, make sure your internet is connected and rejoin. And I was like, well, this isn't good. I thought it stopped the show completely. It hopped in and I see two of me and I was like, well, I thought it kicked me out.
Yeah,
Why is there a second one?
I wasn't sure if you were still like there. You could still hear me. I was like, well, I guess I'm just gonna start and keep going, so I'm not just staying silent the whole time.
Yeah. Way to run through it like a trooper, but daily show will be back tomorrow. Hopefully it'll be two people with improved internet connections from myself. Regardless, we'll have two people in the chair hosting for tomorrow. So thank you for everyone who tuned in, and thank you to everyone that is watching recap after the fact. So thank you, and make sure to like and subscribe to Vendetta Media, Vendetta Sports Podcast Network, all that stuff. Make sure you go and do that as well. So thank you to everyone who tuned in. But for today, Jack and myself are out.
Peace.